Good afternoon, everybody. Today I want to talk about an idea that's been ever so romanticized. An idea people live for, die for, and spend their whole lives dreaming of. And that idea is liberation. Liberation in recent context has been thrown around a lot, whether you've seen it being debated inside of a TikTok comments section, to being on news headlines about the International Court of Justice. Palestinian liberation has dominated the media for the last 2 years. Yet many of us from the Middle East, or those of us that follow the events in the region, understand that Palestinian liberation is not a new concept. It's not a new idea. It's not a new discussion to be had. It's a discussion we've been having since the inception of the Israeli apartheid state in 1948. And the Palestinians that continue to live there generation after generation, surviving there, keeping up their spirit of liberation and collectiveness, they still pursue despite everything that's been going on. And as today we're seeing the results of a genocide, even though we're after a ceasefire, we're seeing the harrowing videos and photos of Palestinians doing the trek back up north to northern Gaza, going to homes that have been decimated, destroyed, with no healthcare accessible to them, no schools. In fact, their school system has been decimated to such an extent we've coined a new term for it, a scholasticide, a systemic attack on all education system of the region. Despite all of this, we still see the Palestinian spirit of liberation continue to thrive. So I want us to take a minute looking at this now and see three main takeaways that we can see and learn from, and how we can implement the liberation that's inspired all of us in Palestine, and how we can implement it in our own lives today. To begin any context about Palestine, you must first contextualize the history of the Palestinian people. It did not begin on October 7th, where it dominated our local media. In fact, it began in 1948 during the first Nakba. The Nakba, or the catastrophe as it's known in English, was a mass displacement of 700,000 Palestinian people. Entire villages destroyed, a way of life uprooted and thrown out overnight. And then soon after, in 1967, the second Nakba happened, when we saw the same nightmare repeated again and again for years to come. Fast forward to today, we're still seeing Palestinians fight for that same liberation. And we ask ourselves, what is there to do? We feel helpless, we feel hopeless, that despite everything we've done in the last 2 years, are we better off now than we were before? To answer this question, you really just need to look at the Palestinian people themselves. What have they been saying? And as we're seeing a new generation of Palestinians, both in the diaspora and inside Palestine, we're seeing hope flourish yet again. How does this hope flourish? It makes us question that. And the first way is through education. Palestine has the highest literacy rate in the entire world. This is higher than comparable developed countries, whether you compare it to the US or countries in Europe. So why is it so important for Palestinians to push their education beyond everything else? Well, in this world we recognize that not everything's won with bullets and weapons. Knowledge is true power, and Palestinians truly understand that, which is why we're seeing literacy rates, despite being in Gaza with a scholasticide happening and occurring to them, literacy rates are still continuously high as they were before the war. Palestinian education goes beyond just reading and writing. It's beyond whether or not you can read a book. It's about educating yourselves on global affairs and struggles that transcend beyond your limited borders, that transcend beyond struggles that impact your own personal life. Which is why when we were protesting for the Black Lives Matter movement here in the United States, we saw murals going up in Palestine, thousands of miles away, in solidarity with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And various other groups, such as in the South African apartheid abolition movement, we saw solidarity again being shown by these Palestinians. So it's important in our lives, where literacy rate isn't exactly a struggle for each one of us today, it's about how can we implement this idea of education into our own personal lives. How can we learn more about different struggles going on throughout the world? And to do this, I want you guys to change a notion that we normally seem to carry pretty heavily here in the West. That true objectivity about a certain organization, about a certain struggle, about a certain movement, can only come from an outside perspective, a third partier. Someone coming into the area, surveying it, and then letting you know that, oh, this is what I saw and this is what happened. This is not true objectivity. And to truly understand a liberation group and a liberation struggle, and the struggles and the emotion that goes beyond what you can write down on a piece of paper on a news headline, you have to listen directly from Palestinians themselves and other liberation groups. Some of the greatest thinkers of our times and liberation groups and activists, whether that be Malcolm X or Frantz Fanon, they all embody this mentality. They themselves lived somewhere else, across overseas, learning more about the struggles going on there, and then took those same tactics and shared experiences and applied it to what they are struggling back home in their local communities. Albeit they were doing it on a much larger scale, we can still do that today. And no, I'm not asking you all to get up and go, fly overseas, live somewhere for a couple of years. Many of us don't have the ability to do that. We do have the ability to learn directly from the source. This means learning directly from Palestinian writers, from Central American anti-colonialists, from survivors of the Uyghur genocide, from revolutionary thinkers in Tibet, to independent thinkers in Taiwan. Across the world, you will find people having their own personal struggles that they are fighting against. And I want you to compare the two. When you compare this struggle compared to what an objective third-party perspective might be. When you read a national headline saying 3 Palestinians have passed away today in the West Bank. Checkpoints have been closed. 10 Palestinian political prisoners have been taken without charge. What emotion does that really convey? For you to truly understand these liberation movements and these struggles that people go through, you need to understand directly, what does it mean to be at these checkpoints in Palestine? What humiliation rituals are these Palestinians being endured? What does it feel like to them when they're going through on a daily basis 5, 6 checkpoints just to get to a destination, adding hours to their time, taking away years upon years of their lifetime being stuck at these checkpoints? What goes through their mind when they're a political prisoner, being held without charge in these Israeli apartheid camps, where they have little to no legal representation at all? Living conditions are the worst imaginable. What does this mean to them? What thoughts are they thinking? For me personally, reading their works was the only way I truly understood what it means to be held. And I'm still continuing to understand that, as I've not experienced it myself. But to continue to understand what it means to be held in solitary confinement, when you're left with nothing but your thoughts for months, for years even. What does that mean? This shared experience that you will see of being held in solitary confinement is not unique to the Palestinian movement. When you read about prisoners there, you'll find very similar scenarios in Syria, in Egypt, in the prisoners in Guantanamo Bay here in the States. We're seeing it across the world. We're seeing the same shared experience being spread across. And this experience, this shared struggle that you and I might relate to, cannot be conveyed to us. We cannot empathize with it if we're relying on a third-party, objective person to tell us what is going on. We have to listen to these and learn about these directly from the source. So that's the first step you need to make in understanding the education. Something Palestinians have shown us all is solidarity, which is the very next step after you understand these political struggles going across the world. As I've mentioned, you've seen their support with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the Aboriginal community in Australia, with South African anti-apartheid abolitionists. We've seen Palestinians continue to share and stand up in support with these people. In fact, we've seen Palestinians stand up in support of the regimes in the Middle East, whether that be in Egypt and Syria, standing up against the genocides happening in Sudan at the hands of the United Arab Emirates. We've seen Palestinians stand up and show that solidarity. So what does that solidarity look like to us? Here at the individual level, what can we do to show that solidarity with another group? We can all post on our stories. We can all share this. But solidarity, as we like to think about it, isn't always a global enterprise. It's not something that needs to be globally made. Your impact doesn't have to be tangible to show your solidarity. Which is why my suggestion for everybody here in the audience today is to look at how you can contribute to solidarity in your own local communities. Whether that be supporting organizations like the KC Tenets, or the Sunrise Movement KC, or supporting abortion access initiatives here in Kansas City as well. You can support your own local organizations, whether that be through donating to their local funds or projects, showing up to their protests, to their events, volunteering with them. That's your way of showing solidarity with a movement. And just because we're not having a genocide here in Kansas City, that doesn't mean that there's no solidarity to be shown, that there's not an impact to be made. And when you think about it, each one of us, if we all go out and collectively support these initiatives, there's true change that can be made. However, this requires you to step beyond the individualistic perspective that we kind of have in our minds in this capitalistic world. That what can I make a change in? And that's not how the world works. That's not how global solidarity works. I've done extensive work with the Students for Justice for Palestine here in UMKC. And through my work and my goals of raising Palestinian awareness and raising solidarity on campus, I've grown closer to so many more organizations and local struggles than I ever initially thought I'd be a part of. Whether that be working with local health clinics, contributing to HIV screenings for the homeless, or standing up for the Casey tenants, or the Black Lives Matter movement, or our recent protests that happened at the plaza when we were protesting against ICE and these mass deportations. While I initially went to support one organization, because I have this innate shared response of wanting to be a part of global solidarity, whether it be at the global level or at the local level, I'm becoming more interested and more involved in these other organizations that have more tangible impacts to my personal life here in Kansas City, where I can see change happening here today. And for each one of us that might not be too connected with a local organization, getting connected with one organization, with one movement, will lead you to becoming more and more of a cosmopolitan supporter, someone who's more involved in these various organizations, despite none of us have the ability to contribute 100% to each of these movements. So I've discussed solidarity, I've discussed education, but there are more tangible aspects that we can do on our daily basis. And that's, how do we choose to live our daily lives? Where do we want to spend our money? Where do we want to spend our time? Who do we want to spend our time with? And this begs a more important question on, and this is something that's been heavily in the news recently, about a boycott. So what is a boycott? A boycott is saying, I'm going to put my morals above my convenience. I'm going to go out and spend my money at an organization or at a corporation, or spend my time at an event that aligns more with my morals and values than it does my convenience. The BDS, or the Boycott, Divest, Sanctions organization, headed by Palestinians, has been going on for years. And in the recent 2 years, it's really gained a lot more awareness and recognition about it here in the States, where people now can look up on the BDS website a list of organizations that there are targeted boycotts against. And these targeted boycotts, while at first might seem significant, and it's a long list occasionally, we can still contribute a bit to it, whether it's day by day, week by week, adding slowly to the list of stuff that you're able to boycott. And when I'm asking you to boycott, this goes beyond just Palestine. This goes against spending money at local union-busting organizations, corporations and institutions that we know do not put their workers first. When you choose to not spend your money there and instead choose to spend money at your local mom and pop shops, your local coffee shops, when you're spending at these organizations, you yourself are making a difference. Whether or not you're standing up, protesting, raising awareness of these various organizations, your boycott is making a tangible difference. In this globalist, capitalist economy, we put money first above all else. And when we take a moment to decide where you are going to spend your money, you yourself are going against the grain that this capitalist world is putting us into. And it's not wrong with supporting organizations and corporations with your money when you can. It's not inherently a sin or anything like that. It merely comes down to your convenience and your ethics. A major boycott that many of you guys may not have heard of or have been familiar with recently is a vacation boycott, or a tourism boycott as we like to describe it. This is where when you have your vacation, you're choosing not to go to nations where you know are not holding the same values that you might hold. For example, Macklemore raised a lot of awareness about this recently, where he canceled his tours in the United Arab Emirates for their involvement in the genocide happening in Sudan. His ability to say, no, I will not go there, I will not take my concert there, I will not take my business there, and I will not spend my time there, raised awareness not only about what is going on in Sudan, but also allowed him to choose where he's going to spend his time. He will have a concert, his fans will come, but he's going to choose to do it in a nation, in a country, in a value system that aligns more closely with him. For many of you all, you don't exactly have a personal connection to this nation where it's easy to boycott. For many of us, you might think, oh, I've never been to the United Arab Emirates. There's no need for me to go to it anyway. This talk isn't really impacting my personal situation. But let me give you a more personal example. I'm a Syrian. While born and raised in the States, I used to spend every single summer of my life going back to Syria. Every summer, from when school ended, I would be there staying with my cousins, my grandparents, my family members. When the war started in 2011, we couldn't go back. However, in the last 5 to 6 years, I'll be honest with you, I had the ability to go back. I could have gone back to Syria in these last few years. However, me, like millions of other Syrians across the globe in diaspora or just as immigrants, we chose not to go back to Syria. And why did we do that? Because we refused to normalize. We boycotted Syria because we refused to normalize Bashar al-Assad's regime. We would not go back to an Assad Syria. We would not go back to a nation that has normalized the killings of hundreds of thousands of Syrians, of systemic torture, rape, detention, mass deportations within Syria itself. We refuse to normalize that. And while I had the privilege as an American citizen, I could have gone back to Syria, lived in Syria, and spent summers in Syria, and gone back, and I would have been relatively unaffected by anything that the regime did. I chose not to normalize there. The reason I bring up my own personal Syria discussion is that now, after the fall of the regime, with a new government in place in Syria, the pleasure and the happiness that we all feel as Syrians to now go back there is even greater. That we stuck to our morals, we stuck to our values, and now we're able to reap an even more beautiful Syria, an even more free Syria. And while I advocated with Palestinians, even though I am not Palestinian myself, about the Palestinian movement, they would ask me, oh, why don't you go back to Syria? And I would tell them the same story I told you all. And while they themselves as Palestinians and these Palestinian organizations were raising awareness about Palestine, they grew to learn about other organizations as well, such as what's going on in Syria and how they also shouldn't normalize an Assad's regime. Fast forward to today here in the States, where beyond just tourism, as we continue to learn more about Sudan, and we learned more about Palestine and other organizations and countries that have been struggling against oppression, we've all pretty much heard about what's been going on in the Congo. In the Congo, the people's labor has been exploited to such an extent where they are barely living. Where they're barely living. The people there are subjected to some of the worst exploitations of human labor in modern day across the world. Also that they can extract the minerals that we take for granted that are built into our phones and our tablets and our computers and our laptops that we never think twice of. We never even debate about, oh, I need a new laptop, let me go buy one right now, or my phone's battery is getting kind of slow, I'd rather just get upgraded, let me get upgraded right now. As I've continued to learn about different liberation groups, I've learned about what's been going on in the Congo. And I've learned now, on top of the stuff that I should be boycotting, I should limit my consumption and consumerism of these electronics to help contribute to something, albeit not with a tangible difference, in the sense that these corporations will not stop mining in the Congo because of the one action that I personally am taking. This brings me to my conclusion, in the sense that despite everything we might do today, despite the last 2 years of us protesting for Palestine and all that, Palestine is not free today. Palestine is not free today, despite all the efforts that we have done. Which brings us to a chant and a phrase that you've probably heard repeatedly over these last 2 years, is that Palestine, we have not freed Palestine, Palestine has freed us. We have not freed Palestine, Palestine has freed us. What does that mean? This means within the last 2 years, at least personally for myself, I've changed a lot of the habits that I carry on in my daily life to adhere to a more moral, ethical system that I like to hold myself to. I've subscribed to boycotts. I've been volunteering with local organizations. I've been doing more actions and more reading and more just engagement with my local community that I would not have done before October 7th. Why is that? That's because Palestinian liberation is contagious. Their spirit of resilience is contagious. Seeing, despite years and years and years and years of a genocide and apartheid, they continue on with their struggle, has empowered me and enlightened me and inspired me to continue on in the spirit that they have taught me here at the local level. So as all of you guys go home tonight, I encourage you guys to make at least one change to your daily life. One change in the system. One change in where you want to spend your money. To put your morals above convenience, especially, and that's hard to do in this day and age. And I know I've listed off a variety of different stuff that you can boycott and changes that you can make, but I'm asking you to make a singular change. Make one change, and as you continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to go on about your lives, you can create these more convenient opportunities for you to boycott and add in these changes so that you live a more ethical and peaceful life, so that when you go to sleep at night and you lay your head on that pillow, you know that you've done your part to collective liberation. So I'm going to leave you all with one question today. What will you contribute to Palestinian liberation? Thank you.